but we can understand. I remember as a teenager, we had to be home. I had to be home at 10 o'clock. We got home once, and it was 20 after 10. We had stopped and helped one of my friends who had a flat tire change her tire because my brother was with me. We got grounded for 2 weeks. That was not being flexible, right? So that's what I mean by flexible. You need to have some understanding of why, okay? And if someone's, 2 minutes or something, yes, they might be pushing it, but you got to think, okay, what kind of battle do I want to have here? So we want to set clear and consistent expectations. That consistency is something that often is lacking. And we do that very young. It was funny. We were talking the other night, and my dad and I, and Jack said, yeah, I have a problem with that. And I said, no, you don't, honey. You are very consistent. You never follow through with what you say. Whatever you tell Sarah, whatever. You're very consistent in that you don't do it. We don't want that kind of consistency. I told him I was going to use that, so it is. And so we want to look at consistency is a good thing to have. If you say it, follow through with it. So don't say ridiculous stuff. I'm going to ground you for a year, or some stuff. It's just because then it's just words, and they get used to just hearing words, and it's not going to do any good. So, okay, Ben, I need you. Ben, help me. All right. Okay. So we want to show acceptance. Paul exhorts us. Accept one another then, just as Christ accepted you. How does Christ accept us? Unconditionally, right where we are, our warts and all. Okay? Acceptance is embracing people for who they are rather than what we want them to do. Okay? When we accept our kids, we give them a sense of security. So we accept them, even if they're not the great football player, even if they are the great football player, even, whatever it is. Accept them. Okay? A lot of stuff they can't control. It is who they are. Even, sometimes they're nerdy. Sometimes they're going to be more athletic and not as nerdy. Maybe, just differences. Regina might end up with one child that's not musical. You have, see? So she's already identified that, and so she acknowledges that, and there's an acceptance there, not a push to be like everyone else. All right, so it's that acceptance. We want that. Appreciation, on the other hand, it tells our children that acceptance tells them that the being matter, then that appreciation tells them that what they do matters as well. Okay? So we want to applaud their effort and persistence, not the end result, but their effort and persistence, because that's what matters, not necessarily the end result all the time, because we might fail. We might not get the end result that we want, but we want to show them that we appreciate, that it's great that they tried. They put forth effort. They did what they could do. So we want to go there. Okay, let's look at discipline. If you look up the word discipline, it means training that corrects, molds, or perfects the mental faculties or moral character. It's control gained by enforcing obedience or orderly or prescribed conduct or pattern of behavior. It's self-control, and it's a rule or system of rules governing conduct or activity. Okay? Discipline doesn't equate to, a synonym is not punishment, because discipline is training. Then we come back to that whole training. We want to teach them how to do stuff. In Bible quizzing, we always say they need to learn to be disciplined, which means they need to learn to do the verses every day, right? That's learning a discipline. We want them to learn to, when they are doing their quizzing, they're focused on that. They narrow their brain down. They're not thinking about their 3DS or playing on the trampoline or going swimming. It's a discipline. It's a mental discipline of, I can narrow it down. I was really impressed with Vince today that he could keep referencing, even though we kept having conversations in the same room with him. I mean, that's a mental discipline that I don't have. That would be so distracting to me. And then we talked about how the clock bothers Caleb. so he needs it a little bit more quiet. So, it's how do we learn to be disciplined, but then we are teaching discipline. We're teaching how to curb behavior, right? So it's not just punishment. Punishment is intended to correct or to train as well. But we find that punishment is actually the least effective behavior modification technique. I mean, look at how much recidivism there is with criminals that go in and, I mean, they're in and out. You know, the 3-strike rule. Why? You know, it's that whole kind of thing. Because punishment is the least effective for changing behavior. We want to modify behavior. We want to look at different ways of doing it. Punishment in itself is imposing a penalty for a fault or offense or a violation. It is to inflict a penalty for the commission or offense and retribution or retaliation as a deterrent. Okay? So its goal is to deter you. But it cannot be the only thing we look at. Is it appropriate at times? Definitely. Definitely we want to inflict pain on our children occasionally. Does that mean that's how we want to always do it? No. And depending on the child, you could be done with that whole spanking idea by the time they're 2 or 3 with some kids. And you may not even have to do that. My dad always says I was one of those children that you wouldn't have had to do it. Too bad my mom didn't know that. Okay. In Proverbs, let's look at some verses here. Okay, Proverbs, it says, the rod and the reproof give wisdom, but a child left to himself bringeth his mother to shame. Foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction shall drive it far from him. Withhold not correction from the child, for if you punish him with the rod, he shall not die. Okay? We want to look at, there are times, and when we, well, let me keep going, then I'll say what I was going to say. Correct thy son, and he shall give thee rest. Yea, he shall give delight unto thy soul. Believe me, if you don't, you're not getting rest. Not even as an adult, because your kid's going to be doing whatever they want, and it's going to be always chaos and drama. He who spares the rod hates his son, but he who loves him disciplines him promptly. All right. But you have forgotten that the scriptures say to God's children, when the Lord punishes you, don't make light of it, and when he corrects you, don't be discouraged. The Lord corrects the people who loves and disciplines those he calls his own. Be patient when you are being corrected. This is how God treats his children. Don't all parents correct their children? So when we think of that, an angry man stirreth up strife, and a furious man aboundeth in transgression. So what we want to do is we want to use punishment. We don't want to avoid it. There's so much that came out, and Spock had his play in it. There's other people that had a big influence on this. Oh, you know, if you punish your child, then you're hurting their inner self, and you're going to stifle them in their expression and creativity, and just a lot of different ideas that haven't played out over the years. We want to have correction. We want to use discipline. We want to do it appropriately, but not when we're angry. We never want to touch a child when we're angry, because an angry man stirreth up strife. We don't want that. What we have to remember is I'm training, and part of that training might be some correction. When they're younger, that might be. I know with Carter, I had to swat Carter. He's 16-month-old. I swatted him on the leg the other day. He kept grabbing I have some little dogs. He would grab their fur and twist it, and they'd get mad, and they would growl at him, and they'd bite him, and he'd laugh at them. And his hands were all red, and even Grandpa said, tell him no, because he can do it. In his voice, no, you know. And he did that, and he looked at me, and he looked back at Grandpa, and he kind of laughed. Grandpa's yelling at me. And then he'd go after the dog again. And the dogs were trying to get away from him. He'd go, and he'd grab them, and he'd grab their fur, and he'd twist it, or he'd smack at them. And so I finally grabbed, and I swatted his leg, and he looked over at Grandpa, he looked back at me, and he went, like, what are you doing to me, Grandpa? Okay, so I had to use attention. He was just, you would think a dog biting you didn't break the skin, but his hands are red, his arms are red. They're growling, their teeth are showed. He thought that was hilarious. But hopefully if you correct young enough, there are going to be some kids that, you're going to have to intervene when they're a lot older. But you don't want to do when you're angry. If you're out of control, walk away from it. It's not worth it at that time. Because punishment, a special physical punishment, is not designed so that I can beat you up. And if we're angry, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to be mad, and I'm taking out my anger on you. So we want to keep in mind that we want it to be training. It's to be corrective. It's going to be thought out. It's going to be controlled. And if I'm angry, it's too easy to cross over and be out of control. So we do not want to get there. All right, learning is a relatively permanent change in behavior that arises from practice or experience, okay? Learning. How are they going to learn? So sometimes we have to get their attention. And if they're not listening to us in order to get their attention, sometimes it does take that little swatter that takes, especially when they're little. But I want to go over a little bit as far as classical and opera conditioning. You don't have to remember these terms at all. Classical conditioning associates learning that enables organisms to anticipate events, okay? Operant conditioning is learning in which an organism learns to engage in certain behavior because of the effects of that behavior, okay? So, basically, classical conditioning is that which was put forth by Pavlov and the dogs, if you ever heard about it. And the bell rang, and the dogs learned to salivate because when the guy came in to feed the dogs, there was a bell on the door, and he would open the door and come in, and then he would feed the dogs. And when humans or dogs see food, they naturally salivate. In fact, you can think about food, and you can start salivating, okay? It just happens naturally. So what happened, though, is they found that when the bell rang, the dogs would start salivating even when food wasn't presented. How did they know that? Because it was actually an experiment where they had the stomachs of the dogs on the outside because they were actually looking at the gastrointestinal kind of process, and so they were watching that. That's the only way they knew those dogs were salivating. It's not like they were in their mouth. But they saw the juices start flowing. So it's a really kind of cool thing that they knew that, but it was just from that bell. Here's another example, okay? I tend to, before the speed limit went up, back in those days of old, when it was 55 and coming out here through Pennsylvania, when I'd drive from Michigan and the speed limit was 55, I have gotten a ticket in Pennsylvania before, okay? I've gotten a ticket in Ohio coming out here before. I've gotten a ticket in Tennessee and in Kentucky and in Texas. I've gotten many tickets in Michigan. Over the years, if I see a police car, I get butterflies. I get a rush if I'm driving. Because police car to me means I might get a ticket. And getting a ticket means money. It's going to cost me money. And I've even gotten into the point once where I had 3 tickets on me. And that was right after we got married. And then I'm like, so my insurance was, it's horrible, the money. And then it was like, oh my goodness, what if I lose my license? I get restricted, because of points. So, but that reaction in my body that happens when I just see it, and I don't anymore because I haven't gotten a ticket. Well, I did get one in December, but before that I hadn't gotten one for like 5 years, okay? That was my first one in Texas. I'd been pulled over like 4 times in Texas, but I only got 1 ticket, and that was last December. So, and I took defensive driving, and now it's not on my record. See, I just shouldn't tell you guys all this stuff, but, okay. So, it's not as bad now. I don't have that natural response because I didn't have that same thing happening. So what's called an extinction happened. I don't have the natural response from that stimulation. The stimulation meaning there's a police car and I'm driving down the road. Another example could be if you do really bad in math, okay? And you get tests back and you failed. Well, you're going to start to equate math with failure and the feelings that come from failure, right? Which is, I might get in trouble, I might get grounded, I feel embarrassed, I feel disappointment, I feel sad. So it could be then you just see a math book and you have that rush of feelings. That's not natural. Anybody here see a math book and go, go, no, it's not natural. But one guy raised his hand. But it's like, and so you can develop that. That's a connection that's made that we don't plan, though. And those kind of reactions, that kind of stuff can happen. Now, operant conditioning, on the other hand, is more structured. It is planned. It's, if you do this, then I will give you this. If you clean your room, then you can play the Wii. So we reinforce you cleaning your room by giving you the Wii. So you know, if I do this, then I get this. So it is a presented action and then a presented reward. Okay, so in operant conditioning, we think about rewards. In classical conditioning, it is connections that are made that we may not realize. Another example with classical, because that's a little harder to grasp, is like the athlete that has to wear, like he can't change his underwear during playoffs. Or he has to wear the same hat or the same shorts or something. They're my lucky shorts, or same socks, or I can't bathe the whole time. Okay? It's just like you make a connection that doesn't make any sense. Like, seriously, those socks are going to make you play any better? Dirty underwear are going to keep you playing better? You know, we know logically it makes no sense, but it does affect their motivation and how they feel. And then they actually play better. And then that reinforces it even more. See? I told you. If I don't change my underwear, then I don't. Okay. So when we look at that. So, again, with the operant conditioning, with that reinforcement, classical conditioning, we don't always pick up on it. And that's where sometimes, like in a classroom, a kid might get reinforced. Sorry, I'm switching on you with that example. That a kid could get reinforced for acting up if they want attention. So you're actually reinforcing it, and that would be operant. You're reinforcing bad behavior because you're giving them the attention that they want, even though it's negative attention. So you're really teaching them to act up even more. So we want to look at that with our kids on what am I reinforcing? And we want to be attentive to if any of that classical, those paired events happen and they're not natural. And they're having a response because of that. If you've ever heard of, I've got little Albert and the rabbit. And what was done was little Albert, they put and it wasn't really a rabbit. People say it was a rabbit. It was a white rat. And they put this white rat near this 2-year-old, okay, 2 or 3-year-old. And they put this rat, and then they'd hit this really big gong, and it'd make a real loud noise. Well, what happens if you make a really loud noise around a 3-year-old? What does a 3-year-old do? They cry, yes, because it startles them. So they cry. And so they'd show the rat, they'd make the noise, 3-year-old cry. Show the rat, make the noise, 3-year-old cry. Well, now, all they do is show the rat and not make the noise, and the 3-year-old cries. But then what happened with little Albert, we learned later in life, is that anything white would make little Albert have that same response, and he would cry. So whether it was cotton, whether it was, a white shirt, different things happened to where poor little Albert, now a teenager and then an adult, would have these feelings. He might not cry, but he'd still have that rush of emotion because of what was done as a child. So we want to be attentive to if there's any of that pairing going on. But with operant, punishment stamps out a stimulus, and we say, no, it's not going to happen. Let me go to the next slide. Nope, don't want to go there. Sorry. Let me give the example of operant conditioning. All right, so I teach a class, okay? And I walk in as instructor, first day of class, but I don't know that they've already got together and they've discussed, they're going to play a joke on me. So I come into class, and what they've decided that any time that I walk on this side of the room, that they're going to look at me, they're going to pay attention, they're going to make eye contact, they're going to act like they're listening, they're going to lean forward, okay? But then anytime I walk on this side of the class, they're going to put their heads down, they're going to look at their phones, they're going to look at their computers, they're going to open the newspaper, they're going to pay no attention. And then when I walk back over here, then they put them all down, they pay attention to me, they're making eye contact, which would be very reinforcing as an instructor, right? Then I walk back over here. They pay no attention, and they're not responding. I ask questions, no answers. What side of the room do you think I'm going to teach from? Over here, right? Without even knowing it, I would be reinforced to be over here. Does it make any difference that I teach from here versus over here? It wouldn't at all. But I'm going to tend to stay over here most of the class, even if I'm unaware of it. And that's the thing. You can become unaware of it, but as parents, we want to look at what am I reinforcing in this child. If they want attention and I only give them negative attention, guess what? What I'm teaching them to do is mess up more often, because that's the only time I'm going to have a conversation with you. We need to talk. I got a call from your teacher again. You did this, you did that. But all the rest of the time, I'm over here, and I'm not paying any attention to them because they're being good. You know, they're playing. They're doing what they need to do, but I don't attend to anything. So what I'm going to do is teach them how to get my attention, which is going to be more negative. And it can play out in many ways, but it can play out in the positive. So what we want to do, what we normally do, is we ignore kids when they're acting good, and we pay attention to them when they mess up. We kind of ignore their schoolwork, or we, oh, you got an A, that's good. Oh, you did good on that test, that's good. You got an E or your F, you failed it, now you got my attention. So what we're doing is we want to look at what am I reinforcing. So what we need to do is do this side, intentionally do this side, where I'm giving them attention when they're doing good, when they're doing what we want them to do. And then when they're when over here and they're not doing what we don't want them to do, yes, we have to address it at times, but we definitely want to decrease the amount of attention. We don't want this to be my conversation and my interaction with the child is the negative. We want it to be the positive, right? We want to catch them being good. We want to really emphasize it. We want to get on that. We want to play with them. Play games. Have family day. Have family night. Have game night. And don't just do big stuff as far as, well, we went on vacation for 2 weeks this year. No, remember, come back to that time. It is quality and quantity. So it's not just the vacation time that matters. It's not just Saturdays that matter. It is, we want to give it to them, okay? And so what you want to do is, when they are messing up, address it, let it go. You want to have as the limited amount of interaction possible when they mess up. Be directive. Deal with it, correct it, be done with it. Don't sit there and talk about it for 2 hours. Hash it over and over and over because you don't think this kid's hearing you. So it's be directive. Be, and then shut it down. Give them more attention when they're being good. Does that make sense? And that works for a lot of things. Back to the whole external validation. With little tiny kids, it works really good. Smiley faces and stickers. But we really want them to turn to where it's just our being pleased with them. We all have a need for approval. Kids particularly want the approval of their parents. And so it's reinforce that. It's use that to our advantage. Not making them then get there because they do want to interact with us. So we want to remember those two different concepts. You can Google them, you can look them up, you can read more about them, but I have so much to cover, I'm going to go on. All right, so when we look at goals of misbehavior, one of them can be for attention. All children desire and need attention. The parent responds by scolding or warnings. The adult is temporarily satisfied, but not for long. Okay? Because what gets reinforced if I yell at Sarah and she does what I want her to do then I just got reinforced to yell at her again. Because now she did what I wanted. A good example is when you take a mom and a crying baby. All right? What does the mom want? The baby to not cry, right? What does the baby want? To be picked up, okay? A lot of times to be picked up and to be held, right? Yes, you're right. It could be hungry and all that stuff too. Babies like to be held. Okay? So mom wants silence. Baby not to cry. Baby wants to be held. So baby cries. Mom holds baby. Baby stops crying. Mom got reinforced to pick baby up more often. Baby got reinforced to cry more. Now mom doesn't want to carry baby all the time. We have a conflict here, don't we? Because now when mom puts baby down, baby cries. And mom doesn't like that. So it happens very young, yes. 2-3 months old it can happen. Right, Erica? It can happen really young. Those babies, they are smart little things. They know how to manipulate behavior. And so they will learn. If I cry, you'll pick me up. You'll nurture me. You'll cuddle me. You'll rock me. You'll pat me. And sometimes we just have to let that baby cry, because the more we pick them up, then yes, I get what I want. They get what they want. But ultimately, I don't want to be holding them. And so that's a good example of how people are reinforced. And you're like, okay, it's a temporary thing, but it's not going to work, because now I got to hold this baby all the time. Or I have to sleep with them. Or they won't go to sleep without me holding them. They won't go to sleep without me rocking them. They won't go to sleep without a pacifier. You can't cut their fingers off, so we won't go there. So, whatever. But they want attention. And so sometimes misbehaving is because they want attention. Another goal could be power. Okay, the goal of misbehaving, to say, I am in control or you can't make me. Remember what age that was? Make me. That's about 5. Okay? Go ahead and make me. They want to have power. The power, and then it leads to a power struggle if you engage in that. You can't have a power struggle if you don't engage in it, because guess what? Who has the power? The parent. There's no struggle. You don't have to fight for it. You already got it. The only reason you'd have to fight for it is if you're giving it up. So don't give up your power. You're in control. You don't have to go to their level. You don't have to engage them there. Okay? So then the parent feels angry. That's when you're giving up your power, is when you get angry. As soon as you get angry, they're gaining on you. They're getting control. So stay calm. You can get irritated, but you can go. There's times that Sarah bugs me to death. I just say, go away. Go away. Leave me now. And so we don't have to, because as soon as I start yelling, when I get mad, I'm losing power and she's gaining it. That's what they want. They want to have that power struggle, and she wants my power. And so we want to look at that, okay? It's not a win. There's no win in it for parents, because you already have the power. So you got to decide, am I engaging in this? They're misbehaving because they want to make me angry. So how do you do that? Don't get angry. Deal with the behavior. Straight, direct. I'm not having conversations with you. I'm not going to discuss this. I'm not interacting with you. I'm not going to reinforce you engaging in negative behavior. Okay, it could be for revenge, okay? Because of a lack of control, one way to belong is to get even. Parents feel hurt, rejected by this form of misbehavior, okay? I'll get at you. So we want to identify, why is my child misbehaving? Is it just because of their age? Is there something they're missing? Are they trying to have revenge? Well, don't let them have it. Deal directly with the behavior. Don't lose your control. Inadequacy could be that the child just gives up, displays helplessness, may isolate, withdraw, do those kind of things. The parent feels helpless. Again, it comes back to, you're not helpless. When your child feels like giving up, don't feed into that. I had a quizzer once, and she'd just go around, oh, I'm fat. I'm like, yep, like an elephant. I'm so fat. Yep, like an elephant. Because she wanted people to go, oh, no, you're not. Because she wasn't. No, you're not. You look really good. She was like 11. Every time she'd go, man, I'm just so fat. Yep, like an elephant. Now, she knows she's not an elephant, so she's not going to believe that. But it doesn't give in to that inadequacy. Oh, I'm so stupid. Yeah, you're right. Sarah gets into, you love Samantha more than me. Yep, that's right. And now there's Carter too. you don't feed into it. They will try to work on you based on guilt. They will try to get you to react because of your guilt. Oh, my poor child, I haven't, and they'll tell you you've done stuff to cause them to feel inadequate too. They'll play on you. So you want to address it. I might have given this example before, but when Samantha was 16, Sarah was just born. She was a newborn. I'm in my PhD program. I'm really busy. She comes to me. Now, she had a part-time job. She was in her junior year of high school. You know, she's busy. She has friends. She goes out. She comes to me, and she's upset. She says, I just don't feel like you're there for me. I don't feel like you give me any time. Now, I'm like any mom, and I'm going to feel guilt. Oh, I'm not fulfilling my motherly role, And that's how I identify as a mom. Oh. But I had to look at that realistically, and I had to know my child, I had to know our situation. Part of that was because her friends were choosing to engage in inappropriate behavior that she wasn't going to go do that with them. So she was left home on a Friday night, and often Jack and I would go out on a Friday night. And I'd just say, honey, I have this and this and this going on. I am here a whole lot of times when you're not, when you're working or you're out with your friends. But I think the real problem is that when you don't have friends to hang out with, then you would like me to be here for you. And I can't always do that. Unless you want to guarantee that you're going to sit home every Friday night and hang out with me. Well, no, I don't want to do that. Well, of course you don't. Well, then you better change your expectation or you're going to continue to be disappointed. Because I'm doing what I can do. I'll commit a night to you if you want to do that. And she did not want to do that. But see, the biggest problem was that she was lonely when Jack and I would go out and her friends were doing their thing and she'd be home alone. But I don't have to take ownership of that. She needed to learn to change her expectations. Because I knew I was there in a sufficient amount of time. So we look at that. Other things as far as addressing misbehaving, we want to identify those reinforcers, okay? What is their goal in misbehaving? What are any irrational thoughts that are going on? And kids have a lot of them, okay? Like that I'm not there for, because she was switching it to my problem, and she needed to realize, no, that like with Samantha, that was her problem of she needed to make some new friends that were choosing appropriate behaviors to do on Friday nights. So we want to look at it. You want to ask, what is my child trying to convey? When your child misbehaves, how do you feel and how do you respond? Guilt is not a good way to respond. Manipulation is not a good thing. Don't let your kids manipulate you, and don't let them use guilt to do it. If you're feeling guilt, then you need to check in here. Now, if you are doing something inappropriate and you're feeling guilt because of that, yes, check your behavior. But most of the time, that's not the case. But you can listen. And if your child comes to you and says, I don't feel like you're there. Now, if that had continued with Samantha, I would have changed up some stuff. But see, I knew the situation. And I knew where she was. I knew we did spend a lot of time together. We were very close. So I did know where that was coming from at that moment in time. So I'm not saying if your child comes to you and says you're not spending time with me, just always say, well, that's your problem. So you want to know all of that. Know your child, know where they are developmentally, know what's going on in their life. Be sensitive then to your reaction. All right, so what does your child do in response? Do the behaviors keep continuing? You want to make rules to teach children to do what's right. Word it in the positive, okay? Well, often we'll go, I'll say, well, what's going on good? Well, they don't do this, they don't do, but what do they do? Let's put it in the positive, okay? Identify the positive, not the negative. Well, they pick their nose. Okay, well, what do they do that's good, So look at that. Rules should be age-specific, clear, They need to be modeled, enforced, and may need to be visually posted. Enforced is the big thing. I know, and I've told you, when I worked at Community Mental Health, my work time started at 8. I was doing good if I got there by 20 after 8, quarter after 8. I did that for 13 years. The chance of me getting there at 8 after 1 or 2 years wasn't happening because it wasn't enforced. If they told me you have to be here at 8, you're going to lose your job, I would have got there at 8, but it wasn't enforced. I didn't need to be. And finally, after 5 years, I said, why don't you take that off my yearly vow? Because I'm never going to get here on time. I make up my time. It doesn't hurt anybody. So they did. It was practical. But we need to enforce it. If it's not enforced, it's not going anywhere. Expectations should be realistic, attainable, clear. Once children know what the rules and expectations are, they must also know what the penalty is for not following them. So be clear on that. If this, then this. We want compliance. So first of all, you got to get their attention. Sometimes that means, look at me. Look at me. Repeat back what I say. Pick up your shoes. Yeah, I knew that wasn't happening. All right. You want to be quiet? You want to get near them. So get their attention, get quiet and near. Give 1 or 2 steps at a time. Give them notice of stuff. It really helps. Sometimes you can use one word. They know they need to pick up the shoes. You can just go, shoes. You don't say, you left your shoes in the living room again, and why haven't you picked them up, and why aren't they in your closet? That's too many, right? All you do is say, shoes. You might have to go and take their hand and lead them over and go, shoes. Or not even say shoes, just point. It's really easy. Otherwise, you sit there. Vincent, your shoes are still in the living room. Vincent, your shoes are still in the living room. Vincent, your shoes are still in the living room. Okay, so we don't need to do that, and go. He's not looking at me now. And he'll go, oh. And he'll come and he'll get his shoes. Okay? It's repeat after me is one word, start each day with a clean slate. Don't bring up, you do this all the time. You never do that. Just like we said with spouses, don't do it to your kids. Clean slate, okay? Well, you did this yesterday and the day before and the day before. And again, I'll come back with, who's the stupid one here then? Because they keep doing it. Why are you so shocked that they keep doing it? So if you want to change it, then make sure you change it. You need to change because it's working for them not changing. So if you want them to do something different, then you change it up. Don't have dinner at everybody comes to dinner and there's no plate there. Where's my food? Shoes. It's easy. One word. Shoes. I don't have to get mad. I don't have to be upset. Now they're going to stomp off. Don't address that. They're going to huff. Don't address that. Who cares? And start singing. God is good. Whatever. He's picking up his shoes. Okay. So, suggestions. Don't ask why. I've said that. Don't ask why. Okay? Something's broken. I had a new car. It was a week old. Samantha, it had this little cup holder. It popped out. You pulled it out. And it sprang open. And I watched, and Samantha was alone, and she put a cup in. She was pushing it out as hard as she could, and it broke. Now, if I said, why did you do that? What is she going to say? I don't know. Well, what did you think would happen? I don't know. What's happening to my agitation level? It's just going to keep going up. It doesn't do any good to ask why. What kind of answer can your child, what you want to think before you ask them why, what could they possibly say that'll make you feel better? If you come up with nothing, then don't ask them why, because whatever they say is just going to make you feel worse. Why'd you color in the wall? Because it was white. Why did you push your cup on? Why did you break that? To see how strong it was. Why did you, tear all the heads off your sister's Barbies? Because I wanted to. They're not going to come up with anything that is going to help you in most situations. I'm not talking about later teens, but why doesn't usually get you anywhere. You can, if you really need to, don't say why. Just say, could you just explain to me what you were thinking when you did that? If you need to have some information, then put it that way. Tell me what you were thinking at that point. But then keep your mouth shut. Don't ask for any clarity after that, because you will just get angry. Don't say no too quickly, because that happens. Can I have ice cream? No. Oh, I guess you can. And they'll go, but why? Why? I haven't had any in a week. Okay, I guess you can. And see, that can be avoided. And what they just learned is, all I have to do is keep pestering them and I'll get my way. Now, that's not the real thing that happened. The thing happened is, I thought about it and I thought, I guess it's okay. So think, then say no. Don't say it too quickly. Tell what to do, not what to do. Okay? Don't, don't throw dirt at your sister. Here's a shovel, you can play in the dirt. So tell them what to do. Stay calm and focused. Be fun. Use humor. Avoid overusing the word no, and offer choices. Here's some examples. Here's ways to say no. That's not an option. I'm unwilling. Say it in a funny way. Never in a million trillion years. Sing, no, 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 no. That's not appropriate. I'm not ready for you to do that yet, which is great for teens. For younger children, use distraction. Here, especially a 2 or 3-year-old. They're tearing, they're taking all the, I think, Stephen, it was your DVDs or books or something that you used to have, and then in your younger ones, they used to pull them all off. I remember you talking about it. So, you'd have to distract them. Oh, here, play with your cars. Give them something else. Just lead them away from it. Distract them. Because you can say, no, no, no. And then once they're 2 and 3, they're going to go, no, 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 back to you. So we're going to use distractor. Don't even say the word no. They're coloring on the wall. Say, oh, no, here's some paper. You don't even have to say no. Ask, what do you think you would need to do before I would be willing to say yes to that? Ask, what do you think? Is this a good choice for you? For a youngster that has something you don't want him to say that's not or that you don't want him to have, say that's not a toy. Ask, what are other options? No, but I will be willing to. I appreciate your asking. However, it's not happening. All right. Walls are not for coloring. Parents, you have to realize, and especially moms, realize that maybe is not a substitute for no. Because your kids will learn really quick. As soon as she says maybe, she's saying no. So maybe is not a substitute for no. Because they're going to still start arguing with you as soon as you say maybe. So I can think about it. We can talk about it later. Some of these, just use other things. Walls are not for coloring. Here's a piece of paper. Tell them what to do. Water needs to stay in the tub. This is not negotiable. Offering choices, concrete. Do you want to wear the red pants, the blue pants? Offer incentives. Do you want to go to bed now and I'll read you 3 stories, or go to bed in 5 minutes and I'll read you 1 story? Playful choices. Do you want to walk to bed or run to bed? Immediate choices. Do you want to go to bed now or now? Choices with consequences. You may play with the truck on the floor or choose a soft toy to play with on the table. If you run the truck on the table again, I will take the truck away. So you're very clear. Penalties lead to accountability. We want to have that accountability. Have your child decide consequences when appropriate. I already did this with Sarah. What do you think would be appropriate? Sometimes she comes up with really ridiculous hard stuff. I'm like, no, give me a different one. Sometimes it's way too easy. So distractions with infants and babies is really good. Using timeouts, okay? Attend to the time. It should be age appropriate. Some people say the minutes should equal their ages in years. So a 1-year-old, you only would put them in a 1-minute timeout. I can't even imagine trying that with a 1-year-old, but it might be. Maybe when they're more like a little older than 1, almost 2. But, 2 minutes to a 2-year-old, that's a huge long time. Now, I don't know that 10 minutes for a 10-year-old is appropriate. I might do that like times 3. But, all right, so you can use a timer. You want to eliminate reinforcers of negative behavior. You want to use simple discipline techniques if timeout doesn't work. Or not simple, but use other ones, okay? There are different things to do. And you can really get into using natural consequences. If you've told your kid to clean their room a bunch of times, and they, like I said, when they come to the table and there's no plate there, it's a natural consequence. Guess what? I worked all day. I earned the money to pay for this food. You haven't earned it yet. Go clean your room. When your room's clean, you may eat. Eating is a really natural consequence for kids. And you might think, oh, but then I have to do dishes. No, they can do their own dishes. A 4-year-old can take a dish and put it in a dishwasher. You might have to get it back out and rinse it, but all right. So you want to removal of privileges. You want to be age appropriate, but be time specific with those as well. Follow through on the warnings to remove privileges. Okay, it's that whole consistency thing. And I'm almost done. You want to use the natural consequences, like I just said. Child refuses to eat dinner, or they're not getting up in the morning. They don't get up in the morning. Depends on how old they are. Mine is, if Sarah doesn't get up in the morning, she goes to bed earlier. If I have to keep on her, if I say, Sarah, get up, and then 20 minutes go by, guess what? You're going to bed earlier. If it takes you an hour to get out of bed, now she's homeschooled, so we have that, luxury. But if you're not willing to get up in the morning, you're still going to go to bed earlier, because what you're telling me is you haven't had sufficient sleep. That's a natural consequence. If you have to go to bed at 7 in order to get up at 7, we can do that. I will miss spending time with you. I will not miss the decrease in activity in the evening. So you're honest with them. They won't like that. All right. And then logical consequences, the punishment needs to fit the crime. We don't want to be, not enough. We don't want to overboard. And so your child, so I'm not going to tell you what that is. You got to go, okay, what does my child need? And then suppose a child throws a ball in the house, breaks a vase, she could be asked to work off the value of that vase or use her allowance. So natural, logical. Spanking typically works from ages 2 to 6. It's really nice if we can be done with it by then. And if you're really consistent, you can be. And it should be used with other tools. All right, I'm done. And look, it's only 2 minutes after. Any questions right off? I know everybody wants to go home. Okay.
I have a comment.
Okay.
I'd like you to respond to. No,
Oh.
I'll just speak it out. Which is the observation that men tend to not talk, women tend to talk more.
To overtalk, yes.
Where men use less words, women use more words. We're just talking about gender identification. Is it an accurate observation that comes into play when we're talking about disciplining our children? That the negative for men is that they have a tendency to withdraw, not engage the kids. And on the other side, the mom tends to over-engage, and in many times the over-engagement I'm speaking of is not the nurture, but rather the talk. The too much talk at the child and not enough action. And that both of us have to work against those tendencies.
Yeah, it definitely can be, okay? What I have found when it comes to lecturing a child is men are just as good as women at doing that. When it comes to some of the other engaging of, the kind of repeated and going on and on and on, yes, that's more female. But when it comes to, I'm going to lecture a child on something, I find that men hold their own there pretty good. Because I have to tell dads to decrease just as much as females.
What about the lack of action as opposed to verbiage on the part of women? And do you find men not also taking action? In other words, follow through, simply having consequences occur. Where it's not a long drawn out thing. You did this, here are the consequences. Here's what's going to happen to change the behavior.
Family systems are so different now. And so I would say, it's really kind of different. It's going to be, it's going to depend, like with your situation, Regina's home with the kids most of the time. And so sometimes you're going to carry more authority because she's dealing with them all the time and they get used to her interaction. Okay? And I'm only assuming that yours is less than. And so then you can come in and they're going to attend to your voice. That's been the natural trend, through history, is moms are there, and so then dads can come in and go, do this. Or you can use, wait till your dad gets home, that kind of idea. But it's flipping some, like with Jack. Jack's the one that's home with Sarah. So Sarah listens less to Jack than she does with me. So it's kind of flipped with us because she spends more time with him. So even though he's a male and he talks less, and she definitely can out-talk Jack, 10 to 1, even when he tries to correct her, she doesn't tend to listen to him because she's around him then all day. Then I come home and he doesn't, then it's like, why is she listening to you? I tell her, she doesn't do stuff. And so I think some of it has to do with who's spending more time with the child, and they get used to that. Yeah, that fresh voice kind of thing. Now, yes, women can tend to go on and on and on and on and on. Men tend to want to lecture more, and women will just, I don't know, it's not more lecturing, it's just verbiage. And so, yes, men need to not withdraw, not give up, not feel frustrated. And so if we go with that traditional, the man's out of the house and he's working and he's worked all day and he comes home, he doesn't want to deal with it, and then he withdraws. Yes. But so many families are not like that now. That it's really hard. Right. It's really hard to say because, there's so many families that are split. And so mom's doing it on her weekends. Dad hopefully is doing it on his weekends, even though if he's a weekend dad, he doesn't tend to be. Because he's doing more of he's not getting into the training because there's not that consistency there. Some are doing a week with mom, a week with dad, and so you're getting a lot more consistency there. Could be different in the same households, but both parents are having to step up. I mean, they need to step up. You can't just be like a weekend dad. And so things are really, it's so different. Yes, male tendency is going to be, I want to talk less, and the withdrawal and be the fun one. Like I get complaints of, dad doesn't engage, and then he wants to engage, and it's bedtime, and now he's in there horsing around and roughhousing and stirring the kid up, and I'm trying to get him to calm down and go to bed. And he's like, hey, but you complain, I don't interact with the child, or with the kids, and I'm just playing with them. What's your problem? Because, well, that's not the time to play with them. And so I get some of that. When it comes to discipline, it does tend to be still that, typically that males will carry more of that, and some of that is just that deep voice. You're scarier. I know I was talking to my sister, and they were talking about my niece who's 14, Megan. She takes riding lessons, and she was saying that her instructor, her husband, is out there at the barns a lot and helps out a lot. And so, and she was saying though that if he gets mad, that he's really scary. And my sister asked her, she said, "Is he as scary as Uncle Jack when he gets mad?" And so it was, and what my niece said is, well, Uncle Jack's scary because he's so big, but he doesn't get as angry. Whereas this other guy gets really angry, but he's not as big. So it's kind of the same because Uncle Jack's just so big. And so there's just some of that with it being a male. You're going to have the voice, you're going to have the intensity, you have the size that can carry when you do interact. If the stress level is high because you've been working all day, but see, that can go with moms too. Working all day, our interaction with our kids can tend to go negative because we get angry. It's like, I've worked all day, I don't need this. And that can come out, I worked all day. Do you think I come home and this is what I need? I need you to behave, I need this. And we're forgetting, and that's where we can't forget that it's a job. Parenting is a job. It's not the kid's fault that we are both needing to work. It is really the parents' choices in life that have put them in a place where they're both working. I've told Jack at times, I'm tired of working, I'm just going to quit. He's like, all right, we can make do, we'll move to a trailer park, and we'll go down to one car, and we could do that. We could live on his retirement if we cut our house payment in half or a third, if we got down to just one vehicle, we didn't eat out. We could do it on just his retirement, and I wouldn't have to work. And that's why I say when it's choice. We choose that we don't want to live that way. We want to have two vehicles, and we want that. So we have two, and so it's not the child's fault that we're working or any of that, yet we tend to put it on, why don't you greatly appreciate that I go to work every day? Why should they? It's not on them. So it's that attitude, and then we get frustrated and we don't have time, but we're the ones that decide to be parents, and so it's a job, and we're doing the training, and we don't have that liberty to really take time off. It's a constant. There is somewhat of a break that the dads or the mom that gets to leave the house, it is a break for me. I don't get as frustrated sometimes with Sarah because I'm out of the house. Sometimes with Jack's with her 24/7, it can get tough. Or maybe for Regina, if she's with the kids all the time, it's like, and you leave more. So it can be a break, even though you're working. Yes.
A number of years ago, you came in and talked to us, our teachers, about dealing with special needs kids. We know my vision of that is kids are getting labeled even more and more. The concern is inappropriately labeled. For the next session, I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, for the next session, because I know at that time that was very beneficial for the large group of people who gathered here in dealing with children. Not only the ones who have, ADHD is a common word now among our society, but also, the difference in dealing with children and what's available even for helping kids. It takes involvement. Are you intending to do any of that? I'm just trying to...
If my father tells me to, I will. Or if the pastor of this church tells me to, I definitely can. So... Right.
Also a lot of that you need to deal with.
Right.
I'm going to give an illustration. Read about a father. In fact, we heard it and we read it in the paper. He literally quit his job to dedicate to his autistic child. The mom blew it off. In fact, divorced him. And this guy has become a major mover in the state of Delaware and helping a lot of people with autism. Now, I know you can in even 4 hours, but we all have special kids. So it isn't just the extremes like autism, even though that seems to be increasing so greatly. But also we got to be very careful in labeling kids. Well, they just are stupid. They're just this. I really think a great deal of stupidity is choice. That's why I use the word.
Right.
So it's just a thought.
Right. Well,
here also can give some feedback to the pastor about what you think about that would be appropriate, because related grandchildren. How you deal in the extended family with kids.
Some of my plan for when I come back in November is to deal with some of the special circumstances. Okay. And some are not so special, like loss. Children face a whole lot of loss nowadays. And we can think primarily with divorce. So, I am going to touch on some of those circumstances and what to do in those specific kind of situations. But yes, with school, with, there's a whole lot more pressure on kids in the public school system. I know in Texas, we have what's called, it's the STAR test now that they take in the 3rd grade and then the 5th grade and later on. And how anxiety disorders that are coming out because of that, because of the, what the teachers are saying. You're not going to go to the 4th grade if you don't pass this. There's just some things that the kids are dealing with. And so I mean, address some of those situations on as parents, how can we address that to help our kids? Even one of Sarah's best friends, the mom says, she likes her to come over and play after that because this is a little girl that she does very well academically, but she's just such a wreck, and she can be throwing up and all that stuff. And she's just going in the 5th grade. So this was like for 4th grade. I mean, that's sad that we're some of the stuff that our kids are facing, because it's just different than it was when we were kids. And so, what are they facing? Some of it is that it's kind of good because, yes, ADHD was just like blanket all, let's dump everybody in and mislabel. There are mislabels. Some of that is ADHD versus bipolar. We know that some kids are bipolar. They're not ADHD, which I'd rather have them ADHD than bipolar, but either way, we just deal with it. We still have to treat it, we still have to reach out, versus, they're hyperactive and they have this going on. And some is it just behavioral because both parents are working, split home, different things. We're getting some of the same symptoms that are ADHD. Neglect can look just like ADHD, So there is a lot of that stuff that can happen. And so I do plan on giving, just bits here and there. And yeah, in 4 hours, what I can cover, or 3 hours, and just kind of do that and hit and miss on certain little segments versus the overall. Okay? You want to close this? Any other questions? Guess not.
Can we thank Janet for her time again? As with all of these, a lot of information. Don't be overwhelmed by it. Pick and choose. Find what is appropriate to you. Nick and Renee, you probably want to focus on babyhood to 2. Don't worry too much past that. Regina and I would suggest using a pacifier. You can throw it away. A thumb you can't cut off. I'm paying thousands of dollars now because I had the bright idea that I didn't want to have a pacifier. So all the kids got messed up teeth except for Vincent. That wasn't very smart. There's stuff like that. So pick where you're at. Shar, you have to figure out how to deal with a young adult. Go through your experiences of loss. Now they're both grown up. Maybe you're doing a jig one day. Another day you're crying. My baby's all grown up. We're all at various stages. And also, all of these resources are available to you online. And so I would encourage you, with a lot of this information, opposed to being overwhelmed, focus in on what areas are applicable to what you're dealing with, and then go back and look at it. And I do welcome any feedback of specific things that you would like Janet and I to focus upon as we move into the final one. And obviously, what we're kind of doing is drawing a close to the structure of the family weekend. That does not mean that we are done continuing to teach you, equip you, and I am quite sure that Janet will be pulled back in and resourced and utilized in future. But the actual family weekend structure, where we're doing 2 or 3 of those in each of the either spring or the fall, drawing that to a close. So be selective, don't be overwhelmed by the information. And what we're going to try to do also next time is give you some overarching principles that then you carry out. Now, Janet did some of that related to developmental. There's some principles, and then you've got to carry it out in your specific circumstance. Are you a single mom? Are you a single dad? Are you married with teenagers? Are you married with young children? Are you both working? Is one of you working and one not? All of these change the dynamics of the application. How you carry it out. What you need to achieve doesn't shift. But how you achieve it is what shifts. And so that's where the application comes in. So part of the job of what we're trying to do here is give you enough information and enough principles. But you've got to, just as with yourself as an individual, just as in your relationships, whether marriage or with other people, so with your children, you've got to go and take this and you've got to think. You have to spend time thinking. You have to apply it. You'll make some mistakes, so you'll correct course and adjust and then work to go at it more. What we're trying to do is equip you, give you resources, give you the ability of information, and so that you can then carry it out. And of course, if you're here as a grandparent, that comes into play too, because you're also, and I know everybody jokes about grandparents, and they lose their brains and have no sense and all of those kinds of things, and you just spoil the kid. But really, I don't think you really want to hurt your grandkids. So you can be the grandparent in the sense that, yeah, you probably aren't going to be the parent, but you still want to have lines. You still want to have boundaries. They may be looser or gushier than the parents. You don't need to be the parent. But there's a lot of things here that you can utilize as well in your relationships with your children as they're having children, but even more importantly, with your grandchildren as they're in your care, for instance, or visiting for a weekend, or all of those kinds of things where you can have a positive impact. And again, our end goal is having healthy children, because healthy children become healthy adults. And healthy adults are going to establish healthy families that in turn will produce children who can be healthy and become healthy adults. We want to get on the positive side, not stay on the negative. Yeah, the family's falling apart. Let's one family at a time turn it around. It's really that simple. And it's amazing the power of when one family turns it around, and then another family turns it around, and then another family turns it around. It's amazing the impact that can begin to happen. That's how change occurs. So why don't we stand, lift our hands and our voices, and thank the Lord for what we've been able to learn. And those of you that are in my discipleship class, take a 10-minute break, go get something to drink, and then join me up in the conference room. And we will complete this long day. Lift your hands and your voices to the Lord and thank Him. Jesus, we love you tonight. God, you're an awesome God, and I love you, and I worship you, and I praise you. Thank you, Lord, that we can trust you in all that we have to do, Lord, that we can have confidence not only in our ability, O God, but in yours to empower us. We can do all things through you who strengthens us, Lord. Thank you for encouraging us. And God, let us be equipped, Lord. Thank you, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen, amen. The rest of you that are not in the discipleship class, God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow morning. She wasn't.